Prince. I'm head of the Migrant Workers Programme at the IHRB. Just some quick housekeeping points. We'd love it if you visit the Global Forum portal, where you will find all sorts of interesting information about the agenda. There's additional resources there. There's places where you can post your thoughts on the social wall. You can share your interests, and you can check out other attendees at the forum. In fact, there's a whole new social world that awaits you there, so please do visit the portal. We're also very keen on people spreading word of the forum via social media. So for those of you who are keen users of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, please do tweet and report what is said here. The meetings aren't under Chatham House, so please feel free. We want to try and spread the word about responsible recruitment. The hashtag to use for the Global Forum is simply hashtag GFRR2023, Global Forum 2023. Questions. We're very keen to hear questions from a very knowledgeable audience, both in the room and online. For the online audience, if you submit your questions in the chat on the online form where you're watching it, they will come through to a moderator in the room here, and there's the possibility that they will get asked to the panelists. For those of you in the room, we won't be taking questions directly from anyone in the room, but similarly, you can all submit questions via the online form that you'll find in the Global Forum portal. So if you want to ask a question, please submit it like that. It will go to my colleague Bonnie in the corner. She will moderate the questions and then ask the panelists the questions for you. We hope that way that we can include many more questions than if we dot around the room asking people individual things. I take great pleasure in now getting things underway and introducing our keynote speaker. I'm really pleased to have her here speaking and making the keynote address, Rebecca Smith from Labour Mobility Partnerships. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. My goal for today is to present a vision, professionalized recruitment industry that can be the key to unlocking migration and transforming the lives of millions of workers and their family. This conference and our community has traditionally focused on the dangers of unethical recruitment and how to stop it. Today, I want to shift our view to the transformative positive potential of migration done well. We live in a unique era where migration around the world will be transformed by two parallel and historic trends. And before I get into that, can you hear me okay? I've got a bit of an echo. There is an echo. Let me stop here. We're okay? Are we okay? Yeah. All right, now we'll carry on. Didn't want either you or I to have to deal with that the whole time. Here we go. All right, now we're underway. All right. The first of these two historic trends is the era of forever labor shortages in high-income countries. With more older people and fewer young people in countries like the US and Europe, we're entering an era of aging societies where all industries will suffer from a severe lack of workers. In the last few years, we've all felt this in many parts of our lives. What labor shortages were previously this esoteric concept, but I think now most of us know very acutely what they feel like. You think of the long waits at the airport. You think about the difficulty in getting care for children and aging parents. You can think about the shortages along supply chains driving inflation because there's not enough truck drivers and port workers. These worker gaps are already costing the global economy $3 to $7 billion every day and are going to get far, far worse from here. Without migration, by 2050, OECD countries will lose 92 million working-age people and gain 96 million elderly people, meaning that they will need an additional 400 million workers beyond what we can expect from native growth rates just to maintain our basic social infrastructure. In the past, our response to labor shortages in a given sector has been to raise wages and attract workers to that sector. That strategy isn't going to work anymore. In a world where there's too few workers to go around, you can't solve labor shortages by simply recruiting workers away from another sector. That just creates another shortage. Here's how bad it is. Already in the US, by 2028, the number of new workers in the entire economy will not be enough to meet the needs just of the elderly and childcare sector, let alone the rest of the economy. Let that sink in. By 2028, we will not be able to meet the needs of one sector of our economy. Increased recruitment of foreign workers is the only realistic solution, since the other solutions, like making elderly people work longer or having more children, are simply not practically viable to the extent that we need them. This means that thinking about recruitment has to shift from only focusing on cleaning up supply chains to first securing and cleaning up our supply chains if businesses are to remain functional. At the same time, low-income countries face the exact opposite problem: not enough jobs for their workers. The number of workers is growing far faster than the number of jobs in countries where underemployment and poverty are already defining features of life for far too many. In the same time frame that high-income countries need an additional 400 million workers, low-income countries will have an additional 1.4 billion new workers, 600 million of whom are not likely to be able to find jobs in their home countries. In Africa already today, between 10 million and 12 million new youth become working age every year, but only 3.1 million jobs are created. Think back to what I said. The global economy is already losing $3 to $7 billion every day because of jobs going unfilled. And at the exact same time, 9 million African youth every year are entering the workforce without little to no hope of being able to find a good job in their home country. Hopefully that waste is obvious, but it's also fundamentally a matter of justice. When we look at what explains the differences in income between people around the world, where they are is the single most important factor. As my co-founder Lant Pritchett likes to say, it turns out that there are not poor people, but rather people in poor places. And as we just covered, there's going to be a lot more of them in the coming years. This means that one of the most powerful things that companies can do to strengthen global equality is to hire more workers from abroad. And yet we've often viewed this as a risk to manage rather than something to celebrate. Let me try and put into context what the opportunity to work abroad means for a migrant worker. On average, the exact same worker born in a low-income country and doing the exact same job abroad can expect to increase their income by 5 to 15 times, even adjusting for the higher expenses living in a high-income country. Think about what you would do to multiply your current salary by 10. For workers and their families born into poverty, the chance to work abroad represents food on the table, life-saving health care, sending their children to school. The impact of it empirically dwarfs all foreign aid and all charitable giving. This means that the demographics I told you about at the beginning represent a historic opportunity to transform labor markets to the benefit of the most vulnerable. If we were to fill the jobs that need to be filled in high-income countries by bringing in workers from low-income countries, we would create additional trillion in increased global income that largely accrues to people born into poverty. For me personally, this is why I'm at this conference today. But at the same time that these trends create a historic opportunity, they also put significantly more pressure on recruitment systems. Far more workers would like to work abroad than are able to under the current system. Recruiters in many contexts control who gets access to this golden ticket, putting much of the power in their hands and driving many of the issues that we are here to talk about at this conference. The pressure of increasing numbers of young people unable to get jobs in their home country, paired with the lucrative but empty jobs in countries like the US and Europe, will increase risks of recruitment, fraud, and human trafficking if we don't act effectively and swiftly. Many of the problems we see in recruitment systems and that we are gathered around today are a direct result of these pressures, as well as recruitment systems that are designed in a way that actively creates incentives for fraud and malpractice. These bad outcomes have delegitimized migration, stalling political progress, such that the first thing people think of is not its enormous potential for good, but the risks and abuses that migrants so frequently face. So recruitment is both the challenge and, to some extent, the solution to unlocking the potential of migration. It won't surprise anyone in this room that politics are the primary barrier to letting these workers fill needed jobs. But in the course of our work, we've learned two things that might surprise you. The first is that for the most part, political resistance to foreign workers isn't driven by racism or xenophobia. It's driven by very valid concerns about the way migration is currently happening, the same concerns that brought you to this room today. Most voters fall into what we call the anxious middle, people who are not very for or very against migration, but are rather concerned about abuse and exploitation of migrants, irregular migration, and visa overstay. And as we just discussed, many of these challenges are specifically driven by problems within recruitment systems. As long as voters and policymakers see the movement of people as dominated by human traffickers and smugglers and recruiters and employers who take advantage of those who move, a massive opportunity for improving the human condition will remain off of the global agenda. The flip side of this, though, is that by building a professional and responsible recruitment industry, we can directly answer these concerns and build political support to expand migration. The second thing that might surprise you is that even when we're not limited by policy, it is limited by practice. Many countries actually are beginning to open up their migration systems. Japan, Germany, and Canada have all made major strides in the last 3 years to welcome significantly more foreign workers. And yet workers aren't moving through these visas because missing infrastructure and services has rendered them inaccessible. These visas are unfilled because the systems are too complex for employers and workers to navigate without support, and we haven't developed a reliable and professional industry delivering these support services in time to take advantage of these opportunities. So this is where we get to the positive role of the recruitment industry. We've spent so much time focusing on the very real harms caused by today's recruitment systems that we sometimes lose sight of the critical and positive role of recruiters in a well-functioning migration system. A sustainable, responsible recruitment industry is core to ensuring that we can scale migration while managing it in a way that workers are well prepared, placed, and protected throughout the migration experience. There's plenty of evidence that recruiters play a significant role in reducing barriers and frictions for both workers and employers throughout the entire migration process by building and circulating specialized knowledge of migration opportunities and how to navigate those complex systems. As immigration processes in receiving countries become more complex, the assistance of an intermediary who can help migrants navigate processes which are time-consuming and costly has become increasingly essential. And I'm looking around the room at some of our recruiters, like our partners from Cierto. I think that their experience demonstrates that recruiters can play a critical role in making sure migration goes well for the workers. It's also critical to ensuring that employers of all sizes are able to hire foreign workers. With the growing need to recruit foreign workers, companies traditionally not acquainted with the immigration systems will require extensive support to navigate the systems and hire the people they need. There's also a strong economic case for this industry to exist at scale. It doesn't need to depend on philanthropy. The economic gains to employers and workers from filling half the need that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation would look something like $3 trillion annually. To put it in context, that's an economy the size of India that we would introduce into the global economy. If only 1%, a conservative estimate, of those aggregate gains were spent on mobility industry services, that would imply a $30 billion per year industry. This isn't something that needs to exist on the niche sidelines of the global system. This is something that can be a force to transform labor markets around the world. As a community, we need to shift the timeframes we're centering our work on. By focusing mainly on the present-day harms of irresponsible recruitment, we risk designing solutions that miss the opportunity to catalyze the future transformative potential of well-managed and supported migration. We will not succeed if we focus mainly on suppressing and reforming the activities of our present-day undesirable industry. The draw of migration is simply too powerful and too important for so many people around the world. The way that we succeed, the way that we win in transforming recruitment is by building a strong foundation for the growth of a professional, sustainable, and responsible recruitment industry. We can look to the evolution of other sectors to envision the emergence of such an industry. Many of you likely took a plane to get here. Being able to travel safely and, at least somewhat reliably, across countries or even hemispheres is something that we take for granted as part of our daily lives. But in the 1930s, air travel was dangerous and unreliable, so to the point that one might have easily pointed to the overwhelming challenges of creating a safe, reliable, convenient, and affordable air industry. We can think of today's recruitment industry in much the same way. Decentralized, without proper regulation and enforcement of standards, leaving the clients, workers, at significant risk. So what happened to turn the airline industry from small-scale and dangerous operation to the vast and reliable industry it is today? The answer is decades of concerted, dedicated, and government-supported efforts to create all of the necessary infrastructure, standards, monitoring, enforcement mechanisms, and the consolidation of airlines competing to provide the best value proposition to their customers. They recognized that an airline accident happening anywhere was an accident happening everywhere, and worked together to build a competitive industry that jointly reinforced standards of safety. We've made notable strides recent years in international recruitment. The launch of IRIS was an important step to articulating quality standards. We've seen companies taking on additional local staff to guide their suppliers, training on better recruitment practice for workers and suppliers, and companies making repayments to workers who are found to have paid fees. We've even seen governments taking the critical step of embedding recruitment quality requirements in trade agreements, like the recent one between US and Taiwan. But as demographic pressures intensify and immigration policies open, it is a matter of increasing urgency to transform the industry and deliver professional recruitment services at scale. This requires new and scalable and sustainable solutions. Developing economically viable models of responsible recruitment through financial solutions to reduce risk and timing issues for employers and recruiters. Building technologies that increase transparency and worker feedback, building recruitment models that give workers greater power as clients, and associations of responsible recruitmenters with a vested interest in holding themselves accountable. We envision a global responsible recruitment industry that, much like the airlines, sees abuse in one corridor as a threat to business in every corridor. The people in this room, and those of you online, are well positioned to help guide us to this new world. More than anyone, you have given deep thought to what a better recruitment industry would look like. It is up to us now to expand the tent and invite new types of partners in, from worlds like finance and incubators and accelerators, to support new recruitment startups, bring in new responsible recruitment industry actors, getting all hands on deck and expanding our skills as a community to build this industry. We need to counter narratives that portray migrants only as victims by designing mechanisms that increase their agency and acknowledge the powerful impact of migration on their lives. And as businesses, we need to own our part of this impact and advocate for expanded visa pathways, not only to address labor needs, but as part of a robust global economic inclusion strategy that acknowledges that in today's world, your economic opportunity depends on where you are much more than who you are. Together, we can build a good industry and an industry for good, and transform labor markets so that for workers all around the world, their opportunity reflects their potential, not just the circumstances of their birth. Thank you.